Hello and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Monday, July 12th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tony Gerdeman. The Minnesota game is in 52 days and the game in 138 days. Tom Orr is on vacation. He and his family are attending the Lego National Championships, where Tom has entered a life-size Lego statue of Bobby Bonilla, entering a bank to cash his annual check from the Mets. I can't wait to find out how he does. Tom will be back next Monday unless he hears this show and turns his family truckster around immediately. So joining me today is Alex Gleitman, one of our tremendous recruiting insiders here at Buckeye Scoop. Alex, how's it going?
It's going great, Tony. I can't tell if you're telling the truth or not about Bobby Bonilla Lego entry because I can see Tom doing that. So I don't know if that's real or not. If it's real, that's amazing. But if not, I know he's having a great family vacation. But glad to be on the show.
Yeah, no, it is. It's not real, but the best lies are the ones that sound real, and so yes, that is very much right in the wheelhouse of Tom being a Mets fan. You are also a Mets fan, is that correct, or are you a Yankees fan?
Yankees fan.
Sorry,
unfortunately this year.
So today we're just going to go through. I've got some things we want to talk about the last four Buckeye commits. You talked to Dallin Hayden. You've talked to some of the Kojo Antwi's coach and George Fitzpatrick's coach. So just want to talk to you about these guys a little bit and what you gleaned from them. Let's start with, and really, because when you look at all four of these guys, you got a running back committing to a loaded running back room, a cornerback committed to a loaded cornerback class, the fourth receiver in Ohio State's current wide receiver class, amongst other five-star guys in that same room. And then George Fitzpatrick, who has been an offensive tackle for all of 23 games, committing to play Ohio State big-time football. And so I think the common denominator among them is that competition doesn't scare any of them. And that's one of the things I really like about Dallin Hayden. He's committing to Ohio State, where Ohio State just signed Travion Henderson and Evan Pryor, and that didn't bother him at all, because it's not like he's a December signee where he's looking for somewhere to land. Like, he did this in June. He's ready for it. And so what, I guess you talked to him just last week, I think. What did you take away from him? You've talked to him before. Like, why do you see this being a fit for him? Why do you see this being a fit for Ohio State?
I think there's multiple reasons. First, look at the film. I just think when you look at the style that he runs and the offense that he plays in, I think there's a lot of similarities to what he's going to be doing at Ohio State. I think you've thrown this out before on the board. When you watched him, you saw a little bit of J.K. Dobbins. And while we're not going to sit here and say he's as good as J.K. Dobbins, who's a second-round NFL draft pick and started as a freshman at Ohio State, ran for, over 1,000 yards as a freshman and over 3,000 yards in his career. You look at the style and the ability to have the vision and make the cutbacks and be able to run inside, run outside, and he's got enough speed. He fits for what they do on offense. He just fits. He's a really smart player. His dad, Aaron Hayden, was at Tennessee. Really good running back there. His brother, Chase Hayden, played at Arkansas, is now at Illinois. Pretty good running back himself, and should do pretty well with Brett Bielema bringing good old Wisconsin football to Champaign this year. But, I think outside of that, you talked about the personality and the mindset. I mean, he's very humble. He's a really humble guy, but at the same time, he's really confident in his ability. And I think when you're a fan, you're like, oh, this is great. We get a guy like Dallan Hayden who could come in and, yeah, he'll be good, but, like, there's no pressure because, like, he's not expecting to, like, unseat Travion Henderson or Evan Pryor, and, like, Richard Young's coming in behind him maybe, and, Ruben Owens and all these other guys that they're recruiting in 2023. So, like, this is the perfect guy to come in. Like, that's not Dallan Hayden's mindset. Like, he's coming in and he's okay with splitting the reps. I think he knows that you could save those miles in college and use them in the NFL, and where you're going to make your real money now that you can make some money in college. I think he knows that that's a good thing for him to not have to carry the workload and do 30, 35 carries a game like you might see in some other places. But at the same time, he's like, he's not just a placeholder and kind of like between the 2021 and 2023 classes. he's a guy who's coming in with that mindset that he wants that job from day one. And I think Ohio State loves that. Him and Tony Alford, just a great connection. It's a guy that they've wanted, high character kid off the field, hard worker on the field, in the locker room, in the weight room, in the classroom. And so I think just you check all the boxes across the board. And while I like to say I don't think he does anything like exceptional when it comes to his on the field stuff, but he does a lot of stuff really, really well. To maybe even great in some categories. And I think that's someone that's going to fit really well on this football team.
Yeah, and another comparison I saw on the Ask the Insiders board, somebody mentioned Trey Sermon, the way he can get through traffic and deal with second-level traffic, and he's not the fastest guy, not the biggest guy, just ends up getting yards, and I think that's an interesting comparison as well. And you can tell that Dallin Hayden's not some placeholder. He talked about Ryan Day spent 2 hours talking to him and just sitting down and talking to him. And you can't sell somebody for 2 hours because eventually you'll get tired of the sales pitch. So this is like conversational stuff. This is, let's talk about your future. This is why you're best for Ohio State. This is why you're a good fit. And it's not just, well, now let me tell you about the undercoating, and, you're just constantly selling them on stuff. And that's why I'm wondering if Ryan Day is changing the game in recruiting and how it is done. I can't even imagine Urban Meyer sitting still for 2 hours, doing anything, let alone talking to a recruit in his office for that long. And nobody loves recruiting more than Urban Meyer. But Ryan Day is he taking it? I know it's different than Urban Meyer, but like, what makes it so effective? And it's not just Dallin Hayden. I think it's all of these guys that he's had an impact with, just these four and beyond.
Yeah, it's not even just those guys. I've had the privilege of having a few conversations with Ryan Day, and he's just super easy. Like, he's just very easy to talk to. He's a personable guy. He's down to earth, and he's genuine. That's just who he is. He's not a salesman. I mean, you said 2 hours, let alone 2 minutes. I mean, you know pretty quickly the real deal and not. And look, I mean, sometimes that's okay. It's okay to be like a little bit more of a salesman, but that's just not his style. I mean, Urban liked to put pressure on kids. I mean, he was Urban Meyer. He didn't need a shtick or anything like that, right? Like, it was just, this is what it is. Do you want in or not? Like, and other than like Nick Saban, maybe Dabo Swinney, like, nobody else could really do that in college football while he was the head coach of Ohio State. And Ryan Day, not that, he doesn't have any power as the head coach of Ohio State to kind of be or kind of seem like a big shot in a room or things like that. But I think he had enough awareness to realize that I'm going to have to do this my way. And I can't just rely on the Ohio State name, and his way, his whole career has just been being a genuine, down-to-earth human being. And I think whether it's an average fan that he's going to talk to or a recruit, it's probably going to come off the conversation might be a little different what they talk about, but the actual approach is going to be the same. And I think that when you talk to kids, when you talk to their parents, their coaches, that's kind of the common thread throughout it, is just that Ryan Day is genuine, down-to-earth, and someone that they can really relate to and feel very comfortable that they're sending their kid to go, spend 3 to 5 years under his kind of watch and protection.
Yeah. Let's move to Terrence Brooks, the cornerback committed with 3 or 4 corners already in the class, depending on how you see Kai Stokes. I think what I like in my corners is they're not afraid of anything. They're fearless. And if you're committing to Ohio State at cornerback at this point, with all of the guys they have in Jaheim Singletary and Ryan Turner and Jair Brown, Mick Walker had a conversation with Jair Brown recently, which is a very good conversation, where Jair talked about he used to be looking around because he would get caught up in the recruiting rankings and things like that, but now he's no longer looking around, and he's confident in his own abilities. So you can find that at BuckeyeScoop.com. But he could have gone anywhere, took officials to Alabama, took official to Texas. And this is another one where Kerry Combs gets, I think, the bulk of the credit, because this is what he does. He lands guys. But am I wrong for wanting to give a sizable portion of this to Ryan Day to be able to continue to land corners? And again, Kerry Combs is the primary recruiter. He's the guy. But how much of this is Day, how much of this is Combs, and I guess how much of it is just Brooks being that's who he is?
Yeah, don't forget Matt Barnes either. He's the position coach now, and that's a really big part of it. Obviously, Kerry Combs was a big piece of it. This is a kid whose dad played at Texas A&M. Everyone thought he was going to Texas A&M, and it was Texas and Alabama and Florida and I forget maybe one other school. I don't know if can't remember. Maybe LSU or someone else was involved as well, and um, it's just Ohio State, I think, probably in the beginning wasn't really sure if they had a real chance with the kid. And then I think kind of going through different targets and figuring out, okay, who's left in the country to be able to go after at cornerback. And they kind of started having the conversations and building the relationship and made the offer when they felt like it was realistic that they could at least get a visit and be in the game. And once he got the offer, he talked it over with his family. I think he was probably going to go to Alabama at that point. That's just my opinion. Maybe Texas, if not Alabama, but I think it was going to be Alabama, and they decided to take the official visit to Ohio State. And to your point, Tony, I don't think it was one or the other. I think it was a full hands-on deck effort with him, with the family, just making them feel comfortable. As Bill Green always says, comfort and relationships. And they did a great job building the foundation of the relationship. They cultivated it on that official visit, and they made Terrance and the entire family feel comfortable just with not only him going that far from home, from Texas to Ohio State, but also the fact that they're going to be the best place to develop him and put him in position to reach his goals on and off the field when he's done at Ohio State. So I think it was just an all hands on deck effort. And to your point, you got to give the kid a lot of credit. I mean, look, rankings don't always matter, but this is also a kid, though, who's ranked a top 100 kid, maybe top 50, depending on who you're talking to. So usually those kids don't really care who else is in the class, but sometimes they do. And he just confident in his ability. He knows who he is. He knows what he can do. And I think he knows that Ohio State does play a lot of defensive backs too. So that definitely helps with the pitch a little bit. But I think he feels confident, forget all the other guys, Jaheim Singletary, Jair Brown, anyone else in the class. I think he feels Ryan Turner. He thinks that, he's going to play no matter what.
The all hands on deck, you mentioned that Kojo Antwi had an all hands on deck from the other perspective, where it's almost like a family decision on where he was going to go. And his story is pretty incredible. Came over from Ghana when he was like 6 months old. He's got a couple of brothers who are like 20 years older than he is. They helped him get to camps and all of these things. And it's been a family affair in getting him to become this high 4-star receiver that he is and top prospect. And just it's not something that they did lightly, allowing him to, or deciding on, I wouldn't even say allowing him to commit to Ohio State. It's like they all decided it was the family decision that Ohio State was right for him. You had conversations with Kojo's high school coach, Jacob Bolden. I think it's pretty clear what type of person they're getting in Kojo, and that he's going to be hardworking and has come from a different place than a lot of people, and is going to, I don't know, just maybe treat this differently than some, appreciate it more, has a different perspective, especially with his family. But you've talked to his high school coach. What kind of person, what kind of player are the Buckeyes getting in Kojo?
Yeah, well, when you talk about him as a player, I mean, the one thing he kept saying was just speed. And it's obviously something Ohio State loves to hear, especially at the wide receiver position. I think, though, the biggest thing that stood out to me was when he was talking about the mentality of, I asked him why he was a good fit for Ohio State and vice versa, and he just talked about his competitive mentality and just those competitive juices that naturally flow inside him and drive him. And he's not scared of competition, and he's the type of guy who's excited to be going against great defensive backs in practice. And he doesn't care that there's, I don't know, however many stars are in that room anymore. If you total them all up, it's the last 3 classes have just been absolutely insane. How many amazing top 100 receiver type guys they've put in that room over the last 3 years. And he's not shying away from that one bit. I don't even think that was like a thought in his head of like, I shouldn't go here because of that. I'm sure other schools were trying to tell him that, but I just don't, that's just not how he's made up mentally. And I think that's what Ohio State loved about him. I think that's why he loves Ohio State too, because the whole iron sharpens iron thing. And I think it's a real thing, and he's embraced that. So that was a big piece of why this was such a good fit. And then I think, the family was a huge part of this decision, and I think they felt really, really comfortable with Ohio State for non-football reasons, and I think that was a big reason why he ended up coming to Ohio State over some of those other finalists.
And let's finish up with George Fitzpatrick, a former tight end, has made the decision to grow into a tackle, and as we mentioned at the outset of the show, has been a tackle in just 23 games. I think reminds a lot of people who follow Ohio State recruiting maybe of a Zen Michalski type, where it's not necessarily a project, but it has grown into this role and has come to it later in life. And I think maybe Greg Stadrara said of Michalski, he doesn't have any bad habits yet because he hasn't been this always bigger than the other guys and could just lean on them and overpower them. And he said to move his feet in order to become a good to great tackle. I guess you're a great offensive tackle in high school if Ohio State and other schools have come after you. But you talked to his head coach, Dave Logan. What did you take away from that conversation?
Yeah, I think just the kid's mentality, and like he basically said he's the total package, and I believe it from what I've heard and just talking to Coach Logan. You don't want to say the kid's perfect because there's always something, but he's an excellent student in the classroom. He's a great teammate. He has a ton of friends. He works really, really hard. When they asked him to switch to offensive tackle before his sophomore season because they felt that was the best way for him to get on the field and also the best way to help the team, it wasn't even a hesitation. It was sure, coach, if that's going to get me to play and it's going to help the team, like that's what I'll do. And when you hear a coach talk about, they want their best players to be their hardest workers, doesn't always, especially at the high school level, it doesn't really always work that way. Urban Meyer always used to talk about that. The guys like John Simon being first in, last out, and his best players being, I forget the terminology he has for it, but kind of those guys being the leaders, and then it just having it trickle down and having the best players, lead by example and vocally about that type of stuff. And I think George Fitzpatrick from day one, just from a culture standpoint, that's something the coaches aren't going to have to worry about. They're not going to have to worry about getting on him to go to class or to go to the weight room or to put in the extra reps and the extra hours in the film room. And I just think that this kid, while he might be a little raw as far as only playing the offensive line position for 2 years, I truly believe his coach when he says the sky's the limit, just because of all the different intangibles. I think that's a really big piece of it. And I think this is no knock on Zen. I think he's a much, I don't want to say better prospect. That's not the right word, but I think, I don't want to say even the upside's higher, but like, I just think he's maybe even a little bit more polished than Zen to some extent at this point. And you look at a lot of really successful NFL offensive tackles. They used to be tight ends at one point. Even they go to college as tight ends. I mean, Kirk Barton was a tight end that turned into an offensive tackle and then was an All-American at Ohio State. So if you have the right frame and you have the right mentality and the right work ethic, it's going to usually work out really well for you, especially if you go to a school like Ohio State. And so I think hearing that all those things do fall into place for him was what was really exciting for me in Ohio State landing the kid.
Yeah, and just hearing about the type of person, the type of teammate he is, I thought it was interesting. Logan told you that schools, programs don't sell themselves, and you think back to all of the position coaches at Ohio State have said Ohio State sells itself. But if he has opportunities to go wherever he wants, you kind of have to differentiate yourself through the head coach, through the assistant coaches, and through the culture of the program. And right now, like the Ohio State culture, Ryan Day seems like a perfect fit for what George Fitzpatrick is looking for, and also what Ohio State is looking for from their players. So I think that's it seems like they've got exactly what they're looking for in Fitzpatrick. Now, how many more guys are they going to get on that offensive line, real quick, Alex, before we get out of here?
Yeah, no, I think it's at least 2 more. I've been a 4 guy. Like, they have to take 4. I think if it was me, I would take 5. And I think if it's the right 5, they would and could take the right 5. I know look, I mean, Berm's a friend of ours and things like that. And I know a lot of people on our board keep coming over and say, he keeps saying they're going to take 3. And look, there's plenty of reason to believe. I think that may have been maybe their thought process even going into things. But I think with who's on the board and who they potentially have the opportunity to get, I can't see them just taking 3. So, they're never going to reach, especially at that position right now with just the way things are going for them in recruiting. So I don't think they're going to take a guy just to take a 4th guy if they couldn't get 4 guys that they really liked. But I think as of today, they're in a really good position to get 4 guys that they really like, if not 5. So I'll say that they go with 4 and add 2 more to Tegritz, Shabola, and George Fitzpatrick.
All right, we'll hold you to that, Alex. If you end up being wrong, Tom will let you know. I would not do that, but this is Tom's show, so he will be sure to let you know about that. So thank you for joining me today, Alex. For more stuff from Alex, including him and Mark predicting how the 22 class is going to finish up. That was on your, I think, most recent Around the Oval at BuckeyeScoop.com or at YouTube.com/BuckeyeScoop. You can find that there. If you're not subscribed to us on YouTube, you can do that. It's real easy. Then you would have been notified of that show when it dropped. And so we will go ahead and end it here. Thank you all for joining us. Have a great day, and somebody will be talking to you tomorrow.